Greetings. I've said this before about how one of the most annoying things anyone can say to me about autism, mine or anyone else's, is when they say, well, there's two things really, but they are kind of two sides of the same coin. One is, the first and the most annoying is we are all a little bit autistic. And the second is you must have it very mildly then. Or they'll describe themselves as having, I think I've got it mildly too, which is just another kind of play on the, I think everyone's a bit autistic thing. And the simple fact is, no, it's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. I mean, I'm not insulted or offended because I don't get offended by anything, but I find it frustrating, and I never fail to jump on them and correct them, because I think it's actually harmful to us as a group to have people thinking this. I mean, I get some people probably do it because they want to help us. They want to make us fit in. They want to perhaps make us feel better about ourselves. Now, I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't need help feeling better about myself. I'm fucking awesome. So, please, you don't need to patronise me in that way. But I read an article recently which kind of explains it quite well. It's on the website The Aspergian. And it's, I can't remember the exact title, but it's something about the phrase on the spectrum doesn't mean what you think it means. And it's as good as an explanation as I've seen as any, and probably better than most. Now, most people mistakenly think the autism spectrum is like a gradient. It goes from the thin end, which is mild at one end, to the thick end at the other, which is severe. Well, that's not exactly how it is. It's more of a spectrum of, like a spectrum of light, where you've got, in the autism spectrum, you've probably got 7 or 8 different areas where we have difficulties and challenges. And to be diagnosed as autistic, you have to present in every one of them enough for it to be an actual disability, if you like, in your life, to a greater or lesser extent. And it's things like the use and understanding of language, social awareness, sensory processing, neuromotor differences, repetitive behaviour, that kind of thing. Now, obviously, I present in all of them, but in different ways. Like in my use of language, you'd think, well, there's nothing wrong with him, he's normal. But no, I take things very literally, for instance, and I'm unable to pick up various hints and things. Okay, social awareness, I can't read people, I can't read situations, I can't read body language, I can't read faces, I don't really understand the need for social niceties, and I can't do them anyway. As I've said before, I'd be a great leader but a crap politician, because I have the qualities of a great leader, but I can't play the political games that a politician would and wouldn't want to anyway. Neuromotor differences, for instance, I'm very clumsy, my manual dexterity is poor, my handwriting's poor, I'm constantly covered in cuts and bruises, and my wife says, wow, what have they been doing now? And I don't notice. So anyway, you can imagine this broad set of categories, 7 or 8 different categories of different areas where your autism presents itself. And within those categories, you've got various aspects. And the spectrum is a little bit like the spectrum of light. You've got indigo at one end and red at the other. Okay. And they kind of, the colours might represent these different categories. So your autism, your diagnosis, how you present as an entire person, is a collection or a selection of different elements from each of these different categories. So you can imagine, in the same way as if you want to mix a certain colour of light, okay, not paint, because paint's different, but with light, if you want to make a certain colour of light, you mix different elements of the spectrum. You'd mix the primaries, but that's just a detail. Okay, so you'd mix different elements, you get your final colour. Well, you can think of an autistic or an Asperger's person as having a colour. Okay, now please don't start thinking about indigo children and fucking universal frequencies of energy. That's not what I'm talking about. This is an analogy, okay? By analogy, every autistic person will present differently, and that autistic person will have a different, say, colour, because there'll be a different mixture of all these elements on the spectrum. So it's not a case of you either severe at one end or mild at the other. That's not how it works. In the same way as a spectrum isn't a kind of small amount of light at one end and a big amount of light at the other. Okay, it's a different colour. That's all it is. So, for instance, myself, you look at me and you think, well, he's normal. He's got mild autism. Well, that might be how it presents itself to you, but it's not how it presents itself to me. So in many ways, saying I have mild autism is kind of, I guess it's insulting, but it certainly demeans and diminishes and minimises and trivialises the challenges I face on a daily basis. Because while my use of language might be brilliant, the manual dexterity thing can be a bit of a problem, especially when I get tired. Repetitive behaviours. You won't see it because you don't know me very well. But if my routines are thrown out, I get quite stroppy and pissed off. It upsets me. And I can no more control that than you can control the need to shit, you know, at times, to put it indelicately. My information processing is very good. You'd think, oh, he's normal, he's perfect, he's fine, no wrong with him, he's very mild. I can do social interaction, but that's because I'm very good at pretending. Okay, I've got a vast dictionary of responses in my head I choose from. Whereas, so I would present as a person typical of Asperger's, because that's what the diagnosis was as well, funnily enough. Someone else, they might have brilliant social awareness and use of language. Saying, well, I've got good use of language, but they might have brilliant social awareness and information processing, and they might have no need for routine, but their neuromuscular or neuromotor differences are so profound they are unable to function. They can't speak because they don't have the control of the mouth. They can't walk properly. They might just sit in the corner rocking because that's what they do. They might not be able to function on their own. Their executive function might be so dysfunctional they can't function and live on their own. Well, my executive function is dysfunctional, but not to that extent. I could happily live on my own and did it for many years, and I can live on my own and I can support myself quite comfortably. I'm difficult to live with, I'm sure. You ask my wife, she'll tell you. But I can do it. Whereas other autistic people, are brilliant at all that and crap at other things. So we're a mixture, okay? We're an agglomeration of, a grab bag of traits you get from the autistic spectrum. But we all have some of them from each category, otherwise we wouldn't be diagnosed as autistic. To say, because you sometimes exhibit, or even frequently exhibit, one autistic trait, one part of the spectrum, you're a dead green instead of a mixture of all the different colours, like a shitty brown, then to say that you are autistic or mildly autistic or everyone's a little bit autistic doesn't make any sense. You can't be a little bit autistic. You have to, for the diagnosis, you have to present in all the categories to a point where it affects your life negatively. Okay, all of them. It's a little bit like being pregnant. You can be a little bit pregnant and massively pregnant because you're fat, but you're either pregnant or you're not. And in the same way as you're autistic or you're not, there's no kind of middle ground. Okay, if you have one or several of the presentations of the traits, you get a different diagnosis. Okay, for a diagnosis of autism, you have to have all of the traits. So you have to have traits from all of the categories. If you don't, then you're not autistic. So please stop thinking in terms of everyone's a little bit autistic. It's a spectrum. I'm on the really thin bit, but I've got some of it. Or, oh, that person's really autistic. And hey, John, you can't be very autistic because you're almost as normal as I am. So you're probably quite mild. Stop thinking in terms of that, and stop thinking in terms of, well, everyone's a little bit autistic. It makes no fucking sense, and it doesn't make us feel any better. It actually makes things harder, because it makes it harder for us to get our needs and our requests over for help and assistance. Okay, I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm not expecting or asking for special treatment from anyone, not in terms of legislation and the rest of it. But if I ask for help, please don't minimise it by saying, well, I don't think you really need, you're not trying hard enough. We all feel like that at times. I think you're overreacting. No, I'm autistic and it's a fucking big problem for me. If I'm asking for help, believe me, I need it. Right, that's me out of here. Go over to the blog, unapologeticallyautistic.com, read the stuff, make the comments, and I'll see you there. See you later. Ta-da.